Former President Trump there speaking to his supporters at Mar-a-Lago just hours after facing his arraignment. Joining us now to discuss the Trump arraignment and where we go from here, we welcome Caroline Heldman. She is a Democratic strategist, and Lanhee Chen, a fellow at the Hoover Institute and was also a GOP candidate for state controller. Welcome to you both. The former president addressing his supporters at a rally in Mar-a-Lago. I want to start with you, Caroline. What's your reaction to the events of today? Any surprises for you?
The one surprise is that all 34 counts are felony counts. I think there was some expectation there might be a mix of misdemeanors and felonies. And as you know, he was charged with falsifying business records, which would be a misdemeanor if it were not done in the service of another crime. And although we don't know what is in the arraignment document, we do know that there are felony violations or accusations of felony violations of both state and federal law. Also surprised that he made it back so quickly in time to give a speech at Mar-a-Lago. I will say that speech sounds pretty deflated. If you're used to listening to Trump and his level of energy and his coherence, this speech was a little rambly and a little low energy.
Well, he just started it. Lanhee, I'm curious your reaction. Of course, no surprise here that his response to today's events would come at a campaign rally in Mar-a-Lago. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think it's particularly surprising what the former president's response is. I think the conversation that will start very quickly, obviously, is how this impacts his political prospects, how this impacts the political prospects of the Republican Party going forward. Those are all open questions. I do think clearly, as has been said many times, this is one of those things that will help the former president in a Republican primary. I think that there are a lot of people who support former President Trump, and even some who frankly don't within the Republican Party, who view this particular prosecution as essentially a little bit of a stretch. That having been said, the reality is there's a lot of stuff out there that could get the former president from a legal perspective. This is by far, I think, the weakest of all the cases. What's left out there would be much more concerning if I were former President Trump and his team, if I were looking, for example, at a prosecution from Georgia for certain interference in the election in 2020. If I were looking at the classified documents cases, those are both, I think, more significant cases potentially. So other shoes are left to drop here, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm curious if you think that he is going to effectively use this, Lanhee, I'm going to start with you, to bolster his campaign. I mean, you already saw T-shirts being made.
Yeah, there's no question he's going to use it to bolster his campaign. I mean, this is classic Trump playbook, to take something like this, which would appear to be a liability, and try and turn it into an advantage. Now, the challenge for him is that while he advances his standing with the Republican electorate, at the same time, I do think that this causes a problem with independent voters. I think it causes a problem with voters who might support a Republican or a Democrat, so-called swing voters. I think in a general election, it is not helpful for him to be under indictment, for him to be charged with these crimes, and for a trial to play out. But as I said, I think most people see this particular set of prosecutions as being politically motivated. The other cases that are out there are fundamentally less political. They deal with items which I think are deeply problematic and deeply troubling if you're viewing the situation. So from his perspective, right now, he's going to try and do as much as he can to gin up support with the base and see where that takes him in the short run.
Caroline, I just want to remind our viewers what happened today of the events of today. 34 criminal charges related to false business accounting that links back to hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Now, Democrats, as we know, have been chasing Trump for years with these investigations. Now, New York DA officially charged him with these hush money charges. But this seems to be only helping his campaign. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at polls, when Trump announced he was going to be arrested, even though he, got the date wrong, he jumped in the polls. He surged and he eclipsed DeSantis. He was already on the upswing. I think he's famously said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and it wouldn't matter. And I don't think that's entirely true. I agree with Lanhee. 60% of Americans support this indictment, but 75% of Republicans, that's true for them. They're very much seeing this as, Donald Trump being persecuted. And I also agree with Lanhee that of the 4 investigations, this is certainly the smallest. Now, nobody is above the law, right? So 23 members of the general public, a jury of his peers, made this determination. That is the basis for this. They looked at the evidence, they decided he had violated the law, and they wanted to move forward with an indictment. But I think that this will not be the big case. I think, you know, Florida is going to be the big case, or we're seeing emergent details in the Jack Smith investigation at the federal level of document handling. It appears that Donald Trump may have looked through documents to decide which he wanted to keep after he had already received notice from the federal government that it was a violation of law, of a series of laws to have these in his personal affects. So I don't think this is the last we have seen. I think as time goes by, it will be really difficult for him to win over independent and certainly Democratic voters, but Republican voters are sticking with Trump on this.
Yeah, we'll see how long this boost will last as more charges could come in other states. All right, Caroline and Lanhee, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Liz.